Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining the Spiritist Talk series promoted by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. I'm very happy to host this talk by Marco Magalhaes, who will be leading our live with the theme Ask and You Shall Receive True Stories About Prayer. Let's all give Marco uh, a very warm welcome, and please allow me to introduce him before he starts his presentation. Marco Magalhaes is a clinician, scientist, and assistant professor at the Faculty of Dentistry, University of Toronto, and staff oral pathologist at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Centre. Marco has 12 years of research experience focusing on cancer and cell biology, and has made numerous contributions to our understanding of oral cancer. Marco started studying Spiritism 15 years ago at the Mount Vernon Spiritist Centre and has since dedicated himself to Spiritism. Marco is involved in the mediumistic meetings and actively participates in activities at the Toronto Spiritist Society and Kardec Radio. Please take this opportunity to send your questions during the presentation using the chat window. Marco has reserved time to address your comments and questions once he concludes his presentation. And now, Marco Magalhaes.
Thank you very much, Bradley. That's for the nice and warm introduction. And now again, thank you all for tuning in today to have this conversation about prayer. It's an honor to be involved again at the United States Spiritist Federation. These are, by the way, it's a great program, lots of good speakers, and I really applaud you guys for keeping this tradition going for such a long time. And I think I've presented the first time so many years ago, and I still really enjoy being able to serve through this. So thank you very much. So today we're going to be talking about prayer, right? And as you see in my in the slide that I'm projecting right now, we're looking at several different sources here. So there's a few of them listed here on the slide, but there's so much more in the Spiritist literature that you're probably going to be quoting other things today during the presentation. But I would say anywhere from the essential books from Kardec, particularly Spirit's book, question 659, ongoing, and then the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 27, and then the other literature that's going to be we're going to be talking about here, right? So why, first of all, why is this important, right? So, well, if you think about our connection, our relationship, right, with our Father, Mother God, and our Master Jesus, and all the beloved spirits that come and help us on a daily basis, we always keep this connection going, right? Even through thoughts or to formal prayers or different strategies that we use to connect and ask and think and relay our thoughts and our ideas, right, to the spirits above. So in Spiritism, we're going to have a lot of information about the hows and do's and don'ts and whys about what we're doing in a much more open approach with a very nice discussion about what this is, right? Instead of having a more dogmatic view of the theme. And I think that's something I really enjoy about looking at the Spiritist perspective on this topic, right? So I'm going to start with two interesting visual aids, let's say, in this presentation for us to start our discussion, right? So the first one is this image. And by the way, this is from an Instagram. It's a father that photoshops or creates images of the kids in very interesting scenarios. Of course, this is not a real picture. Please don't think this is real. There's no one's harmed in the development of this lecture or this picture. But I think it illustrates really well the way some of our relationship with prayer, right? And why. right? When we look at this image, obviously, imagine if you have this young child, right, presenting to you with a direct thought, a request, saying, "No, please, Daddy, I actually want to drive a car," right? A 3-year-old. I don't think anyone that would ever hear this would ever consider doing this, right? To say, that's not a good idea, right? And you're probably going to try to strategize a way to address the question without actually doing it, right? So you're going to say, hey, we're going to do it. It's just going to take a little bit of time and training, right? You're going to get licensed first. You got to get the age to do it. You're going to have the ability to do it. And then when that happens, absolutely, right? This is going to happen, right? Now, take that exact same scenario, right? And think about something that you recently asked God, right? And now you're the kid now, right? In the spiritual perspective, and you're projecting this prayer, which is in this case some sort of a request, right? Say, God, can I please have this, or can this happen? Can we make this happen? Can we do something? And then obviously our spiritual friends will listen to our request with a much broader understanding of the existence, right? And our own path, just like the kid and just like the father in this relationship. And probably tell us, hey, listen, Marco, I think your request will happen at some point, right? Maybe you're not ready for it. Maybe you don't really deserve it now, right? Maybe it's not part of your incarnatory plans. We'll help you, right? We'll give you support. We'll hold your hand. We'll give you the strength to do your trials. But listen, exactly what you asked really cannot happen now, right? But it's going to be answered, right? Just like the father, like with the kid asking to drive a car at the age of 3, right? And eventually it's going to happen. It's going to be answered. You're going to be supported. There's going to be help, but not the way we want, right? So this is, I think, a very nice visual aid to understand this relationship between our prayers and our moral development, right? Of course, there's going to be a point in time, and Kardec pointed really well, that our moral development will be such that the type of request or prayer or communication that we elaborate with God, our Father, Mother, Creator, will be so elevated that things will happen, but not because I'm asking for things in a random way, but because I'm conscious about what has to be done, what I need to do, and then the consequences, and I'm able to do it. Whenever I get that maturity level, right? In this case, driving a car, you're going to be 16, you're going to do classes, you're going to get your license. When you're able to morally, spiritually evolved to get your license, to get trained and to be able to do it in a much more comprehensive way, things will happen, right? But that is an interesting way of seeing this relationship, right, of prayer. And I always like to start with that thought. But there's also the flip side of this, right? And I'll use another image as a visual cue to help us understand this, right? So the next one, again, also taken from the website, you can see that in the link, right? Imagine the scenario that you're really, really in a struggle, right? As you represent in this image, right? And you need something in almost like a desperate mode, right? So let's say in this case, you're lost, you're thirsty, you're hot, and you need some water. So you pray for it, right? What is interesting is that I think and I include myself in all of this because, listen, I'm probably in need of this lecture more than anyone else, right? It doesn't make me special to be here talking about it. Most likely, I'm the one that needs it the most, right? But when we're asking, let's say you're in this scenario, you say, oh God, please, help me. Let me get some resources or water. I'm thirsty. What we picture as a response is what this picture is telling us. We picture this cold, beautiful, crystalline water coming miraculously in front of us, very close to our reach. So we just get it and get it all settled and done, right? And that is obviously far from reality, right? Because the level of expectation is quite different depending on the level of spiritual evolution too, right? And what you think is going to happen, right? Now, if you think about the same scenario, right? So you're in the scenario, you're asking for help. You are always gonna be helped, right? But how? So now it is relatively common that, in scenarios like this, you're gonna ask for help, right? And obviously, instead of receiving this miraculous little, bottle of water, in front of you, you're going to have an intuition. Like a spirit will come and say, maybe we should, walk that way, or, consider, saving some energy, considering maybe stopping this particular spot here for a while, considering other, there's always a support. You're going to receive a pass to allow your body to deal with that scenario better, right? You're going to have not only intuition, but some, maybe some other spirits are going to be influenced to find you, right? Other people around you may be called in, right, for that support action to help you. So you set in motion a very large network of events that is completely beyond our control or necessarily understanding, but it will happen. But unfortunately, the vast majority of us in this scenario would be quite upset about the response because that miraculous change that we're expecting is not going to happen. Our expectation versus reality fails again, right? Because our expectation is something really, this magical event to happen, right? And we want to see it, right? But that does not happen. But we're helped. And when help comes, sometimes we ignore it, right? We're going to say, you know what? Maybe someone comes by, right? And say, listen, my friend, come with me this way and we can try to find something to help you, right? You're going to say, no, I'm waiting for my bottle of water, right? And you sit right there. And then God sends another emissary, another spirit, put an intuition in your mind, say, Marco, the top of the hill, go to the top of the hill. You're gonna see something. And then you say, you know what? The top of the hill is too far. I have to climb 5,000 steps, right? I already did my step counts today, right? I'm not gonna do this. I'm just gonna sit here, wait for this bottle of water to come. Not understanding that hill will open up a sea of water in front of you, and trees and but it's hard. You gotta do your climb, right? If you don't do your climb, you're not gonna get there, guaranteed, right? Like some people joke with me sometimes, like I've never played a lottery in my life. I actually never bought a ticket, and I can tell to everyone's like, I can guarantee you one thing: I'm never gonna win a lottery. I can tell you that. And the reason why, because I never actually bought a ticket, so it's pretty clear, it's pretty evident, right? It's the same idea. Like you can't really get to that result if you don't put the effort to do it, right? So those answers become part of our constant ask, expectation. We receive it, we ignore it, and we keep moving on that chugging along, right? And it has a very significant, right, impact on on us, on our faith, in our mental health, right? In so many aspects of our life, right? And sometimes the spirits are coming. There are it can be our familiar spirits, our guides. It could so many spirits can come and transmit the thought, right, directly to our paraspiritual body, so we can see the imagery in our mind and say, "Wow, maybe that's." So we have to develop the sense that help comes in a vast different possibilities, right? But we are always helped when we pray. So now we set up the beginning part, which is like, what do we ask? And we set up the end part, just like what we get, right? So now let's go a little bit more into some of the more details of that process, right? And we're going to do that now, okay? So um, this is obviously a very, very important and well-known quote by Kardec, right? That unshakable faith is that which can stand face to face with reason in all epochs of humanity, right? And this is the basics of prayer, right? Because when you're asking, the power, the generator of that energy that you're asking is actually your faith, right? That is directly proportional to the energy that you devote to that communication, right? And why do we know that? André Louise, in chapter 1 of the book Between Heaven and Earth, and we're going to actually have a little conversation on that book in a minute. André Louise tells, about the book by André Louise, but the guide at the time, Clarence, tells us, every prayer is like any other mission of power. It's characterized by a frequency that can be tuned, right? So here we go. Now we're going to start on the specifics of prayer, right? Prayer, if it is an emission of energy or power, right? Think about this, right? Most people have Wi-Fi's in their homes right now, right? And this is a common thing, so we can actually use that to explain. And before, like, this is the evolution too, right? Before we use radio waves, right? But now I think very few people are tuning into radios on a daily basis. So now let's talk about Wi-Fi, right? So you get home and you put a Wi-Fi one antenna down the house, and you go to your bedroom upstairs, and you're gonna open your computer, and boom, like you can't connect, right? Why is that? Because there's not enough power in that transmission, either from your main antenna or from your computer antenna. They can't connect. There's a distance, right? But not only that, maybe you're connecting in a bandwidth that your Wi-Fi antenna doesn't connect anymore, right? Because every day now there's a new band, right, that you can connect. So that is the frequency that signal goes through, right? So if you're wrong frequency, sorry, can't do that, right? Can't connect. But thankful for us, most modems and antennas now have a very broad range of frequencies, right? So we can connect most of the time, right? But the power is not there, right? So we need to tune, and we need to have enough power, right? So that is important, right? Because the tuning mechanism depends on what we're thinking. What is our vibration, right? What type of energy we have, what type of intent, what we're actually thinking is what defines the tuning mechanism, right? And not only what our lips are saying, but what our thoughts are saying, right? And that's what most people don't realize most of the time, is that the prayer is directly related to where our thoughts are, right? As a spirit, not where our body is moving, like as in our lips, right? If there's a disconnect between that, there's a disconnect in the tuning mechanism, right? But also the power comes from that faith that we talked about, right? And then the consequence of that is also depending on whether we deserve it or not, right? So there's a lot of variables, just like a signal, right? Of any effort, like, in any system, right? It could be a radio wave or Wi-Fi or any type of projection of energy out there, right? Very similar to our telescopes nowadays, detecting radio waves that come from millions of kilometers away from Earth, right? So this is the same system. We need to be tuned. We need to have sensitivity. We need to have power. And we need to, in our case of prayers, we need to deserve it, right? So question 659 now in the Spirits book, Kardec will actually give us a very nice understanding of that, right? So he's going to say, what is the general character of prayer? That's how he starts, right? In a very, I would say, methodological type of approach, right? What is the character of it, right? He's not asking, like, what is prayer, right? So the spirits are going to answer, like, prayer is an act of worship. In other words, like, it's someone, like, that you're referring, or something that you're referring that thought to, but not in a demand and receive relationship, but more in a respectful request, understanding that there's something above you, right? So you have to demonstrate that too, right? Which is important. So praying to God is thinking of God. Ha, that's your thought. Now, remember we talked about that tuning mechanism, right? So drawing nearer to God. I love that sentences, right? Because see, in one sentence, he talks about what is the act of respect and thankfulness and being respectful and worshiping God, right? That's the first one. Understanding that relationship, right? Praying is thinking of God. So we have to have, well, if you're thinking of God, your vibe, your thoughts have to be aligned with that, right? You're drawing near to God. How do you draw near to God? Is by acting according to God's laws. That's exactly how we draw near to God, right? So comes your moral component right in, right? And the last thing he says is putting oneself in communication with God. So connecting that Wi-Fi, connecting that network, that I'm projecting the same type of vibration up. That's the one that's coming from above. So I established this pathway, this very nice, like multiple lane highway, right? Between that thought that I'm projecting with my heart and mind, with God in my mind, with my moral elevated, my request being reasonable, my expectation in the right place, and then I make that connection, right? And then he finishes to summarize. So the prayer have three basic things on it, right? It's going to have praise, an ask, and a thank you, right? Because that's how you demonstrate that respect and understanding of what God is, right? That relationship, right? So that is the character of prayer. But does it matter how it's done? No, the method is not that critical here in this particular sense. It's more on the concepts that we talked about, right? So, and then the spirits continue. When the soul turns towards the divine sanctuaries, in other words, when I connect, right, when I elevate my thoughts into that same vibration, right, of the higher planes through prayer, one's consciousness, so me as a spirit, is put in contact with the creative meaning of infinite life. This is powerful, right? Now, the cool thing for us is that we can do it, right? And that's why Jesus talks about, like, there's like hundreds of passages in the gospel that Jesus is telling us about our faith, telling about, how much power we have in our thoughts, right? In our actions, right? And I think this is very nicely wrapped up or summarized, right, in the concept of prayer, right? Um, if we continue on the Spirit's book, the next question, 660, right? It's also a very interesting, the very interesting question, because Kardec's going to say, does prayer make people better? Wow, look at that, right? You're not only asking stuff, you're actually making ones better. The Spirit's going to say, yes, of course, right? Because of all the things we talked about, right? Because what do you do when you're doing a prayer, right? Say, because those who pray fervently and confidently, that's the faith part, right? Strengthen themselves against the temptations of evil, and God sends them good spirits to assist them. So it will move that mechanism, right? So such help is never refused when sincerely asked for, period. So if you think about, if we ask, we receive. Yes. Yes. But not with the child mindset of driving the car that we saw in the first slide, right? No, that we're not going to get, right? Because it's not good for you, right? So that's why it's important to start with that concept first, right? Um, but but now if you're putting in context, right, that idea of prayer and in the requirement of faith and and all that. So if you go back to the Gospels, like even I think James chapter 2, I think, is going to say, so what good is to claim to have faith but no deeds, right? So James going to ask that. And then he's going to end with that very very famous sentence, that show me your faith without deeds, and I'll show you my faith by my deeds. Right? That's perfect. So why does that relate to prayer? Well, remember that we were talking about prayer. You have, we talked about the ask, the relationship, the praise, the worship, right? The need of the moral evolution, the tuning of your thoughts, the projecting of your faith, right? That is all embedded into the process of prayer. So if you really want to receive, you got to show your deeds. That's exactly what James is talking to us about, right? You need to have your part, right? So you need to work hard, right, to improve yourself too, and use the prayer also as a mechanism of achieving that, as we see from Kardec, right? And question: does it make you better? 100%, right? So see, you can't go wrong, right? You can't go wrong. Right? So what you receive is proportional to what you deserve in your moral evolution, right? And the fact that you're praying will get you faster to that point, right? Of achieving your goals, right? So this is a win-win situation for everyone. So it can't get better than that, right? Cannot get better than that. Now, if you think about it, right? So, are there any formulas, right, that are better than others, right? So this is now from the Gospel according to Spiritism, right, chapter 27. The spirits are going to say, only superstition could contribute to attribute virtue to certain words, right? Because the reality is that, do we need words to pray? Not really, right? You can have thoughts, right? Because if your words are disconnected with your thoughts, they don't mean anything, right? And then they continue: only ignorant and deceitful spirits could entertain such idea by prescribing formulas. Now, should we have to criticize everyone that uses formulas to pray? No. I'll tell you this. I tell this to everyone every time I talk about prayer. So my grandmother, and now she's in the spiritual world now, but I remember this. She had a book of prayers, and she would pray on that book, I would say about 80% of her wake time on a day. And she had this tiny little pieces of paper folded and refolded inside that book that had this sequence of prayers, right, that she would go through, and almost like a mantra sometimes, right? And then you ask me, Marco, oh, is that prayer? That was bad, right? Because she's just repeating words. No. She was one of the most incredible individuals I've ever had a chance to talk about and to meet in my life. And her prayer, when she was praying, it was so intense, I could feel it when I got into the room. The energy, the devotion, the connection, right? Yes, she was using words, but she was using words just to get her into that state. And it doesn't matter, because I can guarantee you that her thoughts and her ideas and the connection was much stronger than any one I've ever had in my life, right? So no, it doesn't matter. The reality is that it doesn't matter how people are doing it, right? Because what is in your heart and your thoughts is actually what's driving it. Okay? And I can tell you, she would pray for something, she would receive it. She was at that level of, the credits, like, bonus hours, that she knew what to ask and she would get it, because that was her, right? Reading all those old prayers constantly, right? Now, I'm pretty sure I can do any strategy I want. I'm not at that more evolution or connection or level of understanding of anything. And she was not a spiritist, because it really doesn't matter. Like, and this is something important for spiritists out there, by the way. Like, if you're not a spiritist and you listen, this is also good. But if you're a spiritist and listen to this, please pay attention to this. Being a spiritist does not make you different, special, better, anything. Most likely the opposite. Most likely this is a chance for you to actually, you know what? We've tried this different ways. You haven't done it. Now we're going to actually put this out front for you, all this information, so you can't escape from it. And now let's see if you can do it. It's almost like we're doing that extra test in the end of the year, you know. So be mindful and respectful, right, of all the other people, right? You know, it's always some sort of a negative thing when I see people out there when they're presenting things in Spiritism, saying some sort of negative things about other approaches, right, to the same idea, right? So that's just a little parenthesis there, right? Um, so now this is from Medium's book now, right? So in such a case, the formula, that's what the spirits are saying, right, is not the formula that is effective, but rather the faith that has been augmented, right, by the belief attached to the use of the formula. There you go. So the formula is not important, but sometimes you can use that to augment that power, the engine, right, that is driven by the faith, right, that will connect you even more, right? So there you go, guys. That is one of the critical things about prayer that we need to know. Okay, and that's what we just read here on this section. Okay, now we brought the idea of faith, right? So we brought the idea of faith now as this main engine for the process of prayer, right? So why is this important? Now this is the skies over, you know, the fall time over close to Lake Erie, and it's really beautiful, right? Because you have this nice projection of colors on the sunset, you know, showing to us this, you know, how light can manifest it's in quite many different ways, and you know, in the creation and all that, right? But no, so you know. There are many passages that are important here for us to think about, you know, the idea of prayer and faith, right? So if you go to the gospel, for example, there's two examples there, but there's many more of those, right? So Jesus is always going to say this, right? Say, you know, Jesus said to the woman in this case, right? Your faith has saved you, go in peace. And then comes, daughter, said Jesus, your faith has healed you, go in peace, right? And he repeats multiple times, right? And you can take any one of those moments apart and analyze it. You realize that indeed the work that the spirit has put in through, right? And how much they deserve it, how much energy and good thoughts and vibes of request, how much power is involved in that ask for change or for healing and all of that. All of those things are taken in consideration, and the engine of that is the faith, right? So that Jesus is saying this, like, your faith has saved you, right? Or has healed you, or has changed you, or, you know, because as you probably know by now, you know, nothing is everything is according to plan in the divine laws of the world. So in other words, our world, our lives, everything is governed by the set of divine laws. So no one would shift you or change the divine laws for an individual, you know, just to make them, you know, their physical body healthy. You know, it's like, how curious, just to kind of show my powers, right? Of course not, right? Jesus is saying that because he's teaching us in that moment, and teaching us that what you're seeing here is a direct effect, the consequences of the actions and thoughts of this individual, right, leading to this moment and allowing them to finish or go through this trial in a different way, right? So there you go. You got it. Good job. You passed year. It's like, you know, you're, you know, it's like my son in grade 6. So in grade 6, you accumulated enough good marks that gets to the end of the year, you're off early. You're fine. You don't need to do any extra tests of the year, right? That's what Jesus is telling us. And he's saying that clearly, saying, you know, your faith. In other words, faith has the combination of that, all of those things we talked about in place. Because also faith cannot be blind, right? Cannot be empty. Cannot, you know, we're going to talk about that in a minute, right? This is real faith, right? That Jesus is talking about, right? And, you know, there's a great example that I find in the book Jesus in the Home, chapter 32. You know, Jesus is talking to the disciples, and there's all these discussions starting about the concept of God and traditions, and you know, thinking about you know, how to honor God or faith or believe, like different beliefs or different understandings of that, right? So Jesus starts this interesting story, right? So he talks that, there was once three men with families that decided to live in a large forest. And these individuals, they lived peacefully and happily, right? Until they started to have different ideas about God, right? The first family, the first man, believed uh, deeply that God lived in the wind. So the power of the wind shaking the leaves and move things around, that was kind of the power that he envisioned in God, right? The second one, no, not really. I think God lives in the sun, right? Because the heat, the light, like the power, right? And the other one, looking at those thunderstorms and how powerful the thunder is, like, absolutely, you guys are all wrong. It's like God lives in the thunder, right? Things that started in a nice and peaceful way all of a sudden took a bad turn, because if they're all considered to be right, but they all believed in different things, so in their concept, one would be wrong, right? Now, if you can make any parallel to what's happening in our world right now, I think you can get to what I'm saying, right? And and they started to fight. They started to not only fight between themselves, but also destroy the environment around them, the forest. Everyone was suffering, the animals, right? So when that happened, emissaries of good were sent to help them out, right? And in the story that Jesus is presenting to us, an angel appeared, right? So the angel appeared, right? And he started by saying that, because all of them were asking for help, right? All of them were asking for protect prayer, right? I asked for protection, I asked for help, I asked for blessing, but they were doing that in a way that was, they were almost asking for the other one to be punished, right? That's, remember the character of prayer, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense, right? So then the angel came, and they were armed, by the way. Like, they had their arms, like one was armed with ore, right? The other one was armed with stones, the other one with wood, right? Just representative of that particular conflict, right? So the angel came. The first thing the angel said is that there are good things in every one of your traditions, right? And in your own way, everyone is right, okay? Because all of you can see the perfection in creation. So indeed, the perfection of the world is a visual representation of the perfection of the divine laws, which is a clear representation of God as being perfect, immutable, all powerful, and all loving, right? So they're right, but they're seeing it from a tiny little window of perspective in the whole concept of things, right? And then the angels explained, you know, you're all doing a great job. Like, by changing the wood into a living structure, building a house, as one of them did, like making the stones for shelter, for protection, right? Or using the ore for one of them to create tools. All of you are co-creators of the universe. How powerful is that, right? So no one was wrong, right? But they were actually fighting about that, right? So, and then Jesus is going to end the chapter saying something that I'm just going to read straight from the book for you today. He's going to say, in matters of religion, all believers have respectable reasons of holding it in the invaluable abilities that should be made. They used to enhance life and time, thereby glorifying the Father. So we're all striving to do in our abilities good things for us and for others. That's the concept, right? But when people hold on to heaven's blessing and do nothing, and they hold on to heaven's blessings and they do nothing for others or for themselves, they're like a miser who dives headlong into the hell of thirst and hunger. In other words, if you're using this but you're doing nothing to help, then you're in trouble, right? In order to wrongly hide the wealth that God has loaned him, like the gifts, the talents, right? For this reason, faith that does not help or console is no more than dark vanity, right? Of the heart, right? And then, all the disciples kind of walked, and Andrew kind of lowered his eyes, and it's a nice description of what happened, right? But again, faith that does not help, right, or inaction or the deeds, right, as we heard from James too, right, is really nothing. And prayer is directly related to that, right? To your deeds, to your actions, to your faith, and to what you have in your mind, right? So those are very nice concepts, right? But what is that then? What is faith, right? So just to kind of wrap that concept up. So faith, means the confidence one has in accomplish something, right? The certainty of achieving a particular purpose, right? Provides the kind of lucidity that enables one to see and thought the end, which is the intent of the means to reach it. So that's from the gospel according to Spiritism, right? And Leon Denis brings a really nice concept too that we need to, it supports that, right? Which is faith, it man's confidence in his destined end, right? It is the sentiment that urges him towards the infinite power. It is a certainty of being on the road to truth. Blind faith is the lantern whose red glare cannot overcome the fog. Enlightened faith is the electric searchlight which throws its bright beam over the road ahead. So nice visual support there from Leon Denis. Okay. Now, so what else do we need to? I think it's important for us to go through now is maybe go through some of the examples, or as we're going to talk about the true stories, right? About about faith, right? And we're going to start with the book Between Heaven and Earth, which I think is is a really good example of that, right? And So in the book Between Heaven and Earth, and I think most of you who haven't had a chance to read, I think it is an incredible testament to the importance of prayer, but not only that, to relationships, right, family, reincarnatory plans, right. This is all nicely connected. Okay, so in this book, we're going to follow Hilario, and this is by Andrea Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. And we're going to follow Clarencio as the guide for Hilario and Andrea Luiz and the group of spirits that are in training, right? And are also, helping, right? Or guiding them in their journey. And during one of their meetings, they received this message, right? Which is what we call a diverted prayer, right? They can hear it, they can feel it, and they're like, okay, we're gonna have to this is something that we need to work on. It's very important. It's very it's beautiful. It's important. It's an urgent matter, right? That's what Clarencio says. So this is a prayer from Evelina. So Evelina is a 14-year-old girl, which is the daughter of Amaro and Odila. Odila is a spirit now, her mother, discarnated. And she actually prays for Odila to help her mother, right, as a spirit, not knowing that Odila is actually the one that's causing the obsession she's asking about, right? But Evelina had really good deeds and a lot of support from her mentors in the spiritual city. When she incarnated, she was, obviously get the support she needed to complete her mission, and she had a lot of faith, right? So that engine, right, was there. The intent was there to help someone else, right? How selfless is that, right? The prayer is all about helping her stepmother, right? Zumira, who's doing really bad, right? So she had the energy, the faith, she had the deeds, and she had the tuning, right? Which was the elevation of the thoughts and the intent, the reason behind it, right? To help someone else. So really powerful message to us there, what Evelina is doing, right? So, but her mother, Odila, had no way of helping Zumira because she's the one obsessing Zumira at the time. And I can tell every person that reads this book, and I put my name there on top of that list, will read that first chapter and think, oh my God, there's Odila. Like, it's such a not nice spirit. Can't believe she's doing this. This can't happen. Not to know, to get our own little lesson at the end, that she's the one that's going to actually help every single person in this story. But you have to read the story to figure that out. But that was a big lesson to me too. I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, I've learned that there's a lot more to people than I think, right? And judgment is something that is ingrained in my brain, right? And I can learn that. But they receive this message, right? And they start to work with, they start to work with the spirits involved. Not only Amaro, but Odila and Zumira, right? And Julio, the kid too, that story, right? That discarnates too. And through the story, through that single prayer that put in motion this entire rescue mechanism, right? Actually turns out at the end that all that jealousy, relationship, angry between Zumira and Odila disappears to the point that now Odila becomes the familiar spirit mentor support for that family and allows Zumira to receive her son again and to continue her life and finishes her reincarnatory plan, right? And this is all by support of Odila, which became after one prayer, right? Now, it's beautiful to see that from a spirit perspective, because when we're doing our prayers, and again, I put myself up there in that list, sometimes we're actually not really trusting this that much. You're like, I'm praying, but you're so down, you're disconnected, your energy is not there, your faith is kind of meh, right? And you're doing this prayer, it's like, meh, why? Why are we doing this, right? It does happen. No, it will have an answer. And it may be a huge effort for so many people and spirits to get this done. And so that's where our faith has to come in strong, right? And it's a super important message for us, right? And because if Claudencio says in that book that he's talking about the prayer. He says it whatever form it may take, the prayer is an action that causes a corresponding reaction, right? Claudencio says, depending on its nature, it either hovers in the area which is emitted. In other words, depending on what I'm praying for and kind of what the energy I'm putting into, and my faith, it hovers around where you are, or it can ascend as this light beam all the way to the higher spirits, in this case, for example, which will have sometimes an immediate response, right? So the impulse is somewhat more noble expression are aided and then become more noble. In other words, depending on how noble you are, obviously makes a difference, right? Can we go more examples? So I'll give you a few more examples. Okay, we have a little bit of time. So this one is also a really interesting story, right? This is from the book Action Reaction, also in Japanese, right? So this book, we're talking about a place called Mansão Paz, which is a place that's maintained by like a spirit called Druso, Brother Druso, right? And it's in the lower realms, like in lower zones, where a lot of suffering spirits are going to be present, and all of them are going to project in very negative imagery. So the place looks kind of, dark and sad, right? So this Mansão Paz is located right there. It's like a rescue outpost, right? That will try to rescue and help so many spirits that are suffering, right, in that realm. And it works with Nosso Lar, right? So it's under the jurisdiction of Nosso Lar. So we're listening to the story about Antonio Limpio. He's under severe depression. He's not doing well, and Alzira, which is wife of Antonio Limpio, comes in and trying to help, both her son, Luis, right, and the spirit discarnate spirit, Antonio Limpio, right? So she comes asking for help, Alzira, right? And this is what the prayer that Alzira, and this is again the prayer coming in, right? This is what Alzira is her prayer to help her husband, Antonio Limpio, and help her son, Luis, which is still incarnated and being through a very severe obsession by two other spirits that we're going to talk about in a minute, right? And I want you to feel this, right? To understand the power of prayer, right? So she starts, Most Holy Mother, guardian angel of all those shipwrecked on earth, have mercy on us and extend your sweet and pure hands to us. I know, dear lady, that you're not deaf to our pleas and that no one has ever gone unanswered when addressing your faith, affliction, and pain. We know that your compassionate heart is a light for those who have gone astray in the darkness of crime, and love for all those immersed in the abysses of hatred. So that's the part that um, she's showing her praise, her respect, right? Um, and this is so beautiful, right? And then she continues, You forgave those who crucified your divine Son on the cross, and besides the patience with which you bore their insults, you even came down from heaven, offering them your protective arms. Plead our case. Now she's going to ask, right? O heavenly mediator, enable us to return together to the flesh in which we erred, so that we may expiate our wrongs. Grant me the grace of following him as a happy, grateful servant, once again linked to the person to whom I owe so much happiness. So she's asking for her husband, right, to incarnate again with him, right? Bring us together again in the world and help us to faithfully restore everything we stole from others. Again, recognizing mistakes, understanding what's gone wrong, prepare to go back. Like a full circle there, right? Divine angel, do not allow us to even dream of having heaven before we have paid all our debts. Again, beautiful, right? Because understanding that, yes, we make mistakes, we have to correct them, right? Very realistic goals, right? Um, accept us with dignity the pain that rebuilds and saves. So know that's going to be trials coming. She knows that, right? Dear Mother, help us, star of our lives, rescue us from the darkness of the valley of death, right? So that's the prayer she puts in motion, right? For that rescue mission to go ahead, right? And what happens after that? So after the prayer, there's a description of she's glowing as a spirit, right? And in Antonio, which is now was completely in a sleep state, opened his eyes for the first time. Very emotional moment. She comes to Antonio, and then they start the rescue process for Antonio, right? So Alzira now goes back to her home where her son is, like Luis, and he's obsessed by a group of over 300 spirits, and particularly by Leonel and Silas, which are, the uncles, right, of him. And there's a very complex story that goes in the background of their relationships. They were actually drowned, and they came back to get to the money, the financial material things that they thought was theirs. And the story evolves in an incredible pace, right? And then at the end, as you can possibly imagine, right, Leonel and Clarindo helped to, so the prayer set in motion this entire things, right? So they all go in the mission of help, and everything kind of closes in a very nice way, but they go into a very challenging motion, right? A major help happening, right? Um, because of that prayer that Alzira puts in place, right? Again, beautiful, beautiful, right? And I'm going to add with another prayer, which I find again very, very powerful, right? From the book Action Reaction, right? So Marina is the character where we're looking at, and Marina is sitting down with her daughter and considering suicide, right? And then she starts, Assistant, forgive my insistence on talking about my misfortune, but I'm a mother. My poor daughter is planning to kill herself tonight, and that's her mother asking for help, right? That's Louisa, right? And immersing her conscience even deeper in darkness. So her mother shows up and asks for help for her daughter that is actually considering suicide, right? So they're able to go and help her, right? And get there at the exact moment that she was about to do it by poisoning, right? And then when they were she was about to do it, right? They were able to intervene, right? Enveloped her and were able to stop that motion, right? In that very last second, right? It had all started because of a prayer and an ask for help from her mother, right? That went straight into this group, right? That allowed it to happen. And then as soon as they were able to to help Marina, right, she started saying, right, dear God of infinite goodness, she began out loud, have mercy on me and forgive me of my failure. I can't go on anymore. Without me, my husband will be better off. Right, in the leprosarium, that's where people who have at the time was called lepra, right? They used to be placed in isolation from the society, right? And she continues, my poor little daughter will find generous heart. So she's giving herself up, right? She's like, okay, I'm done, right? I'm out of money. I'm sick. I have unpaid bills, right? How can I beat this disease that's killing me, right? And she's going through this in her mind, right? And then she was torn, right, between her husband and the little girl and all of that, right? So she's in a really desperate state, right? So Silas, the mentor, comes and administers passes to her, right? Put her to sleep, put her down, and make this little life movements with her, with arm that the poison goes away and falls on the floor, right? And then that little moment, that prayer was able to completely break apart, right? That process that was about to happen, right? So then powerful, immediate effect, right, of the prayer. And there are many other passages you can see in the Workers of Life Eternal, right? In the Casa Transitória Fabiano, which is another spiritual outpost for rescue. You have like some very beautiful prayers asking for help and support of others, right? And that's the story of Zenobia, right? Which I highly recommend you guys reading too, right? And so many others where we can go on. But just to wrap up, then I want to I want to read this from the book Amigo, right? By Chico Xavier, and there's a chapter that talks about faith. So that's how it starts. So faith in God does not keep away the inevitable trials, right? But give the strength to support them. Do not move obstacles. However, it will help you understand each one of them and may receive in silence the message they convey. So now you can see this is the prayer emotion, right? Which is the direct consequence of that faith that he's talking about, right? It does not keep you from disillusion and disappointment, right? That the world will trigger, but to help you learn the lessons, right, they convey. Faith will not prevent you from the most fun complications from moving away from you during your journey. So your trials are still going to be there, right? But it will give you the energy and the resources to replace them until fellows show up and decide to support you. It will not prevent you from falling ill, may still go on to have through this, right? However, enlighten you to understand and assimilate the message behind it. Will not move your problem relative away from you. However, it will help you accept and understand in your own benefit, right? It will not save you from falls and difficulties, but may, however, teach you through your own pain which situations should be avoided for your own progress, right? So you can all think about this as our prayers, what we ask for, right? That's why I like this passage so much. Will not dismiss the problems that perhaps threaten your peace. However, we will give you the serenity to resolve them safely. Will not rescue from the maze of illusion which you might have thoughtlessly penetrated. However, will clarify your ideas so you can free yourself. And finally, faith in God will not change the overall challenging scenario of evolution, but will instill patience in order for you to understand all the steps of elevation, steps you need to climb to reach the highest levels of imperishable life. This is by Emmanuel, the book Amigo by Chico Xavier. Okay, thank you all very much for this moment. And I think we're going to have some questions now. Is that right, Bradley?
Yes, thank you very, very much, Marco, for the wonderful insights and reflections you provided us today. Everyone, please stay with us for the Q&A session, which will start shortly after a few announcements. There is the virtual course, Introduction to Mediumship, a free virtual course for beginners, provided by the U.S. Spiritist Federation, who is thrilled to invite individuals eager to explore the realm of spirit communication according to Spiritism. Check out the new course at learn.spiritist.us or scan the QR code on the flyer. Be certain to check out the continuing podcast-like series, Psychology and Spirituality, A Bridge to a Better Life, based on the works by Joanna De Angelis. A new episode appears every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It is available on YouTube and Spotify. Are you curious about what lies beyond the veil of death? Join us on a profound journey of exploration as we delve into the mysteries of the afterlife with the new book, Transcendence, Life in the Hereafter by Josiah Kongold. It is available at the Spiritist Books store. And there's a wonderful Spiritist app, Be My Hope, available from the App Store and Google Play. This app offers uplifting content in a collection of videos, daily messages, and audio materials. Download it today. There's also now available 7 free professionally recorded Spiritist audiobooks, sponsored and produced by the Spiritist Society of the Carolinas. At your own pace, you can listen to Allan Kardec's foundational works on YouTube at the Spiritist Society Carolinas channel. And on the screen, you'll note there is a QR code. If you want to help the USSF produce more publications and promote Spiritism to everyone, scan the QR code on screen for your donation. Now, let's start addressing the comments or questions from the audience. There's still time to send in yours. From Daniel Santos, sometimes what we desire is not what we truly need. How does God guide our requests to align with His ultimate will for our lives?
Great question, Danielle. Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So what we desire may be completely different from what exactly we need in any single time, right? And I think considering our more evolution currently, most likely that happens most of the time, right? That we're looking at again, like the kid driving the car, right? It's like we're looking at a very narrow angle view scope of kind of what the future is, right? So how does God guide us request? Well, that's great because that's what we're receiving all the time, right? So every single minute in our lives, like we're receiving, information, like suggestions, ideas, right? Our own intuition, like our own ability to, like this seed of light that we're born inside of us, anyways, that guide us to the right place, right? All those things are pushing us slowly over to the right direction, right, to where to go. Now, when we are asking for things that are completely not related to what we really need, we're still receiving it, and we tend to receive messages or ideas or suggestions, or something happens, right, that will slightly show us, or at least try to show us, kind of where we need to go instead of where we want to go, right? The responsibility is actually ours, right? God is doing this like all the time, like a father, right? Like a father, I like to play with my kids, and sometimes, here now and then, my 3-year-old, even when she was 2 years old, right, she would have this wonderful ideas. For example, jumping off the stairs, for example, right? And it's an absolutely great idea for her, right? In her perspective, this is going to be very exciting. It's great. Like, she's accomplished her goal, right? This is what her goal is right now, right? And we have to step in and say, maybe that's not a great idea. How about we jump on the sofa? That would be a lot easier, safer. You get some reward out of it, right? And, sometimes she'll throw a tantrum, right? And say, no, like, this is not going to happen. And insist on doing something that she shouldn't do. And I have to intervene more and more to control that, right? And sometimes she'll accept and say, well, yeah, maybe that's not, I'm ready for that. That's not a better, I'll do something a lot safer and nicer, and we'll do it together. We'll have fun. Well, that's exactly what God does to us, right? will be presented options and ideas and support, and will be guided towards the path that coincides with the divine laws and our needs, right? And sometimes we can throw tantrums at it, right? And we're talking about the spiritual moral tantrums, right? Where we as adults do all the time. Like when we get angry, vindictive, and against the world or God, like, wow, everything's wrong. God doesn't like me, doesn't listen to me anymore. This is what I want to do. Nothing's going right. Well, if nothing's going right, that's probably a good message already that something's got to change, right? Same as anxiety, same as anger, same as, all of those sensations that we're actually experiencing, those sentiments are big messages to us that, it's that maybe something should go slightly different. And I think that's how God and also the entire spiritual community that supports us keeps pushing us the right way. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful thoughts there, Martha. And from the U.S. Spiritist Federation, can we improve our intuition to help us better understand what to pray for?
Yeah, that's fantastic, right? So, yes, this is a daily thing, right? It's not a single answer, right? It's not that, oh, we're going to do this and we'll do much better. No, because the scenarios are going to change, the trials are going to change, everything changes on a very dynamic way in our existences, right? But in general, right, if we allow ourselves to understand that we are receiving answers and we are connecting to God every single second of our lives, we can't run away from it. That makes it a lot easier for us to be more open to understand what these cues are, right? And in a great example of that, like if you even look at a book, look at the Spirit of Gregorio, right? On the book, names appear now, but I'll remember in a minute. When his mother, like this is the spirit that's doing all those wrong things, the whole book, right? To coordinate the entire troop of suffering spirits and all that, and then his mother come at the end, right, and shows to him and say, son, it's time to go. He's touched by that. He changes at that moment, right? So see, for that moment, even the spirit that we look at the book and we're like, oh my God, like, oh, it's liberation, by the way, book Liberation. So we look at the entire book, I was like, okay, this is impossible. This is never going to happen. He's never going to change. That's it, right? We keep doing this in our minds. And then all of a sudden, a single episode in time reconnects them to that inner in it. We all have, like, no one's bad, right? We're all good inside. Right? This is an obvious statement. So in a way, so what can we do to better understand what we ask for? Remember that, let's think about ourselves, right? And see, we're all good inside. We're all kind of moving the right direction. We're all going to be perfect one day. We all have to be open to receive those messages that are coming. Like if you kind of use that as like a daily mantra, all of a sudden you start to realize that, the needs of the overall development of all of us is that what should be in mind when we're going through this, right? So
very helpful. From the Spiritist Network TV, how does the concept of ask and you shall receive align with the idea of free will? Does God determine outcomes, or do our choices influence the answer to our prayers?
Okay, great question. So so free will is a absolutely immutable, unchangeable concept of our existences, right? So that's what separates us from many other levels of development of spirits, right, out there, and other living beings and all of that, right? So we received the ability of free will because we got our license, right? We have one license already, which allows us to have the free will, right? So we can't change that. So how does that align with it? Well, that comes back to the concept of what exactly, what level I am to understand what I'm asking for, right? So I have the free will to ask for anything I want, right? But what I receive back does not necessarily relate to the free will or what I ask for, right? So that is a concept that you see that the free will, or in other words, what I ask or what I receive will be more aligned as more as I move along with the divine laws. So the more aligned I'm with divine laws, the closer is to ask and receive, right? And I'm free to ask for everything, but I'm also free to receive the consequences of all of that, right? So that is where the balance comes. And it's always me, right? It's not going to be God determining it. Like, I'm taking that road. So I can take that road that I go every direction but the right one, right? And eventually I'll find the right road again, right? That was my free will, right? But I can take a very straight line in the path of moral evolution, which is also my free will, right? And the consequences are highly dependent on how close I am to that avenue of the divine laws, right? So in a way, yeah, so we are on the driving seat, right? And everything action you do, even by thought, by prayer, right, will have a direct consequence that will depend on what you put in motion, right? So they're absolutely aligned, like they're actually hand in hand, right, of what's happening. Yeah.
Very good. From the TVCEI International Spiritist Council, if we do good things in this life, why do we need to pray?
Fantastic. Yeah. So there's multiple aspects to that question. So first, like doing good things in life. So it means that you already is connected to a lot of those good ideas and thoughts. So the tuning mechanism is actually correct, right? You're working on that. Kudos, right? Now, the ask, right, and the receive, it may not necessarily be a formal process of praying and saying things. And sometimes what we don't realize is that while doing good things, we are constantly elevating thoughts and ideas right above. And that is an act of prayer, right? It may not be an organized way that we were thinking about, but prayer can happen in 2 seconds, right? By the time you're doing something good and you have a thought in your mind, like, can I, I hope this goes right. I hope I have help to get this right. That was a prayer. You're tuned, you have faith, and you're thinking about something positive and good. So you have all the elements of a prayer already in place, right? Now, the other aspect of this is that by actually praising and showing that respect and understanding of the God, you also putting yourself in a humble position, understanding that you are this tiny little piece in this massive organism that we believe as life in universe, right? So in other words, by doing that, you are setting yourself in a tone of humbleness, right? That allows you to do even more powerful connection, right? So that's why there's two concepts, right? One is that the prayer can happen in every single moment in time and can last a second if needed to. So anyways, even if you don't think you're praying, right? That's something that happens to a lot of people, right? Even there are people that say, no, I don't pray. I'm like, so tell me what you're thinking right now, right? Do that exercise. Like what you're thinking can be a prayer, right? Depending on how you project it, right? And the second part will be that concept of understanding and respecting and being humble, right? So
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay. And from the TVCEI International Spiritist Council, can a strong faith and prayer alone heal us?
okay, so that's a great question, and I probably can talk in like another hour about it, but I'll try to summarize it as short as possible. So can faith and prayer alone heal us? It depends on what type of healing we're talking about, right? If you're thinking about physical body healing, in other words, getting rid of a disease, the answer is no, right? Because whatever's happening in a disease process, it can be at the level of the psychological level, the physical level, right? It can be all of those levels. Healing the disease or the process, that what's happening basically is a process of healing. In other words, when I'm going through a struggle with the physical body, for example, that is part of the necessity step for you to achieve healing, perfect healing of the physical body, right? So that takes time and you have to go through it. It may be attenuated. In other words, you can pray and get attenuation, right? Because, and it happens all the time. You're supposed to come and incarnate and have no limbs, right? And then you pray, you work, and you do this, and you understand, and you change your mindset, and all of this. And then you're going to have a fracture on your arm, but you're still going to be able to use it, right? So you have a massive attenuation of your debt because God is perfect and just, right? But that the fact make it disappear, as some people see the healing process. No, it doesn't happen, because it depends on how much you deserve it. Like, are you ready for it, right? So you're always going to be helped, right? But again, depending on your expectation, right? I'll give an example, right? I have strong faith and I pray a lot, right? But I'm praying that the exact thing that I need to go through in this existence does not happen. I'm praying for that. Let's say I have to go through this existence and I have to deal with a complicated family, right? That was my plan. I came because of that, right? And then I have a lot of faith, but I pray for that. That's not going to happen, right? Because that's my plan. That's what I have. That's the best for me, right? But I'm going to receive all support in the world, right, to go through this in the best way possible, right? So that's what the prayer is doing, just like we heard from Emmanuel, right? So in other words, yeah, the healing, not really in the way we think about healing, right? But will we speed up the healing process? 100%. And we'll make it easier? 100%. Yeah.
Thank you very, very much, Marco, for your presentation and for the Q&A session today. And many thanks to everyone who's watched today's talk live and those who have been following our weekly Spiritist Talk series. We will not meet next Saturday due to the Thanksgiving holiday. But for the first week of December, Marcelo Maderos will speak on scientific spiritism, practical insights for life. Marco, before we close the live, would you please offer a prayer?
Of course. So let us all at this moment, elevating our thoughts in prayer to our Creator, our Father, Mother, God, that allows us to be here today, our spiritual friends and mentors that support us, all the spirits that are suffering in need right now. We would like to thank you for this opportunity, the learning, the experiences, and may we take this light that shines from above us and take our connection to it stronger every day, allowing our inner light to grow stronger as the flashlight that breaks through the fog every day. So be it.